Welcome to Sunny's Mindset Lab podcast. Today we're exploring cybersecurity for everyone. This book tries to answer a simple but important question. How does the digital world actually affect everyday people? I'm so glad to have the author here with us.
Author, thank you, Sunny. That question is exactly why I wrote this book. Most people use digital systems constantly, but very few understand what's happening underneath.
Right, it's just this invisible thing that works until it doesn't. You start the book in a place I didn't expect, though. You go all the way back to the beginning, to something called ARPANET. Why is that ancient history so important for us to understand today?
It's crucial because the internet we use today is a direct descendant of that original network. And ARPANET was a small academic project funded by the U.S. government. It was designed to connect a handful of trusted university researchers.
Trusted. That feels like the key word there.
Exactly. It was a closed club. Everyone knew each other, or at least they were accountable. The idea that a malicious actor would be on that network just wasn't part of the threat model.
So you're saying the actual DNA of the internet, security wasn't even in it from the start. It wasn't just an afterthought. For the most part, it wasn't a thought at all. The entire goal was to make sure a message could get from point A to point B. That's it. And because every new piece of the internet had to be compatible with the old piece, those original designs, without security, are still with us. Wow. So we just kept building on top of that foundation without ever really going back to fix the original cracks.
That leads to this analogy you use in the book, which I think is brilliant. You say, we're living in a global metropolis built on the infrastructure of a small village.
That's the essence of the problem. The original design was like a few dirt roads between friendly houses. Now we're trying to run a massive, global city on that same layout. We're constantly just bolting on security gates and traffic lights after the fact, but the fundamental road system was never meant for this. And it's so much harder to add security later than to build it in from the beginning. Infinitely harder. It's the core challenge of modern cybersecurity.
Okay, so we're dealing with this shaky foundation. To navigate it, you say we need a mental map. Since we can't see cyberspace, how can we start to picture it in a way that makes sense?
I think the easiest way is to break it down into three basic components. It sounds technical, but the concepts are actually very simple. We can think of them as nodes, pipes, and a management infrastructure.
Okay, let's start with nodes. What's a node? A node is simply anything connected to the network that can compute or store information. The obvious ones are our laptops, our phones, and the huge servers that run websites like Google or Netflix. But it's more than that now, right? It's my smart TV, my doorbell, my thermostat. Precisely. It's also the control system in a power plant or the robots on a factory floor. Every single one of those devices is a node, and each one is a potential entry point to the network. The number of nodes has just exploded.
Okay, so we have billions of these nodes. How do they all talk to each other? That's where the pipes come in, I assume.
Yes, the pipes are just the connections that move data between the nodes. Some of them are incredibly physical, like the massive fiber optic cables that run under the oceans to connect continents.
And some are invisible, like my Wi-Fi at home or my phone's 5G connection?
Exactly. Wi-Fi, cellular, Bluetooth, those are all wireless pipes. They're just different pathways for the same data to travel between nodes.
Okay, so we've got the devices, the nodes, and the connections, the pipes. But how does my email find its way from my phone in New York through all these different pipes to my friend's laptop in Tokyo? It seems impossibly complex. It would be, except for the third piece, the management infrastructure. You can think of it as the automated rules of the road for all that data. It's a set of protocols that act like a giant global GPS, routing all the little packets of information and making sure they get to the right destination. And it does this even when the network is constantly changing, with people turning devices on and off. Yes, that's the magic of it. It's designed to be dynamic and find a new route if one path is blocked. It's a system that manages the chaos. That map is so helpful. Nodes, pipes, and the rules of the road. But you make it really clear in the book that understanding the technology is only part of the picture. You say the biggest vulnerabilities are actually us, the humans.
That's right. No matter how strong the technical defenses are, there's always an interface between the human and the machine. And that interface is, by far, the most frequently attacked part of the system.
So why is that? Why are we, the people, so often called the weakest link? It comes down to a concept called social engineering. It's basically the art of hacking a person instead of a computer. Attackers have figured out that it's often much easier to trick someone into giving up their password than it is to try and break through complex technical defenses. So they're exploiting our human nature, not our software. Yes,
They exploit our curiosity, our desire to be helpful, our fear, our sense of urgency, and most of all, our instinct to trust. Is this where something like phishing comes in? I feel like we all get those emails. Phishing is the classic example. A phishing attack doesn't rely on some brilliant piece of code to break your computer. It relies on a well-crafted email that looks like it's from your bank or your boss to trick you into clicking a link or opening a file. So it's a confidence game. It's exploiting my trust in the brand or in my boss's authority, not a flaw in my email program. Precisely. It's about exploiting trust, not code.
This makes me think about the security advice we always hear. Don't open attachments from people you don't know. You argue in the book that this advice is actually pretty bad. Why? Because for many people, it's simply unworkable. If your job is in HR, you have to open resumes from strangers. If you're a lawyer, you receive documents from new clients. The advice doesn't match the reality of how we work. So what's a better way to think about it? A much better mindset is to shift your focus from who the sender is to what the request is. Ask yourself, does this make sense? Would my boss really email me at 10 p.m. asking me to buy gift cards? Be skeptical of the request itself, not just the sender.
That skepticism seems like a really important skill to build, and it seems to apply beyond just scam emails. That brings me to the whole topic of our data and privacy. For instance, almost every app or service I sign up for wants my phone number, and they usually say it's for security. Is that the whole story?
It's rarely the whole story. While using a phone number for something like two-factor authentication can improve security, there's often a much bigger, hidden motive at play.
And what is that motive?
Your phone number is an incredibly powerful piece of data. Unlike your email address, which you might change, most people keep the same phone number for decades. It's a unique identifier that allows companies to connect all the dots about you across many different services, building a very detailed and very valuable profile of your life and habits.
So when they say it's for my security, it's also very much for their business model.
Yes, there's a fundamental conflict of interest there. The company's desire for your data can often be much stronger than its desire to implement the best possible security for you.
This feels related to another concept from the book that I loved, which is security theater. What do you mean by that? Security theater is when an organization makes you go through a process that looks and feels like it's increasing security, but in reality it does little or nothing to actually help. In some cases, it can even make things worse. What's a good example? The classic one is forcing employees to change their passwords every 90 days. It sounds like a good idea, but what do people do? They just change one number or letter at the end. It encourages weak, predictable passwords and gives a false sense of security. I am so guilty of that. I definitely thought I was being safe by changing password 123 to password 124. We all are. It's a natural human response to a flawed security requirement. Okay, so if that's fake security, what does a real fundamental security tool look like? The book talks a lot about encryption. Can you break that down for us in a really simple way? Of course. At its core, encryption is just the process of scrambling information so that only the right people can read it. You take your normal, readable data, which we call plain text, and you use a secret key and some math to turn it into unreadable gibberish. And that gibberish has a name, right? Yes, we call it ciphertext. The whole point is that without the correct key, it's practically impossible for anyone to turn that scrambled ciphertext back into the original plain text. So it all comes down to the key. You mentioned there are two main ways this works. That's right. The first is called private key, or symmetric encryption. That's where you and I would share the exact same secret key to both lock and unlock the message. It's very fast and efficient. But how do we share that secret key in the first place without someone intercepting it? That seems like a problem. That is the problem. It's called the key distribution problem. And it's solved by the second type, public key encryption. Here I have two keys, a public one that I can give to everyone and a private one that I keep secret. You use my public key to lock a message, but only my private key can unlock it. It's a brilliant solution.
It really is. As we're talking through all this, the shaky foundation, the human element, these tools, it strikes me that the book's main message isn't really a list of apps to install or settings to change. It feels more like you're advocating for a whole new mindset.
That is the entire goal. Technology changes so fast that a simple checklist of do this, don't do that would be obsolete in a year. What doesn't change is the need for a better intuition, a better mental framework for understanding the invisible world we spend so much of our lives in.
What do you see as the biggest barrier to people developing that mindset?
Honestly, it's our own human nature. We are wired to seek the path of least resistance. And the hard truth is that convenience almost always trumps security.
Oh, absolutely. I'll click agree on a 50-page terms of service document without reading a word, just because I want to use the app now.
Everyone does. We use simple, easy-to-remember passwords because it's convenient. We save our credit card information on websites because it's convenient. Attackers and corporations alike understand this impulse, and they rely on it.
It also seems like our instincts are failing us. You talk about how we don't have a good way to sense danger online.
That's a really key point. In the physical world, we have intuition built over millennia. You can walk into a neighborhood and your senses give your cues. It feels unsafe. Something is off. You don't have that online.
Right. A malicious website can look just as professional and polished as a legitimate one. There's no creepy feeling.
Exactly. We lack those physical cues for danger. That means we have to consciously and deliberately build a new kind of awareness to compensate for our missing digital instincts.
So if this problem is so big, it's foundational, it's human, it's economic, whose job is it to fix it? It can feel pretty overwhelming for just one person.
And it should, because it's not one person's job. It has to be a shared responsibility. No single group can solve this alone.
So what does that look like?
It means governments have a role in creating smart policy and holding organizations accountable. Businesses have a huge responsibility to design products that are secure and private from the ground up, not as an afterthought. And individuals, our role is to become more aware consumers who demand better from those companies.
So it really comes full circle back to that mindset shift. It sounds like you're saying the goal isn't for all of us to become cybersecurity experts.
Absolutely not. You don't need to be a mechanic to drive a car safely, but you do need to understand the rules of the road, how to operate the vehicle, and how to spot a dangerous situation developing around you.
So it's not about becoming a tech expert, but just having a better intuition for the world we live in?
That's the perfect way to put it.
Ultimately, the goal isn't to make people afraid of using the internet. It's to replace that fear, or maybe just the blind ignorance, with a healthy, informed awareness. An aware user is an empowered user.
This conversation really changes how you look at everyday digital life.
That's the goal. Not fear, just awareness.
This has been Sunny's Mindset Lab. Thanks for spending time with us.